Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something literally game-changing. We're looking at IBM's incredibly detailed and honestly highly aggressive blueprint to make practical, fault-tolerant quantum computing a reality by the end of this decade. Now, if you've been following the quantum space for a while, you know we've moved way past theoretical physics. We are firmly in the era of hard engineering. So let's jump right in and see exactly how IBM plans to pull this off. $10 billion. That is with a B. This staggering financial commitment isn't just about trying to build a marginally bigger chip. It's driving a massive, comprehensive roadmap that spans across hardware innovation, really profound software development, mathematical breakthroughs, and even entirely new manufacturing pipelines. The whole point of this investment is to unlock unprecedented computational power and finally move us past the era of noisy, error-prone quantum experiments. When you look at their roadmap, IBM actually has a really solid track record of hitting their milestones on time. But the ultimate destinations they're driving toward are two landmark systems, Starling in 2029 and Blue Jay in 2033. Now, these aren't just your standard incremental upgrades. We're talking about systems engineered to execute literally billions of quantum gates without being derailed by a single error. It's about fundamentally rewriting the rules of what computers can even do. Here is how we're going to break it all down today. First, we'll look at IBM's $10 billion quantum roadmap. Second, how they are cracking quantum error correction. Third, the modular hardware revolution. Fourth, quantum-centric supercomputing. And fifth, some real-world scientific breakthroughs. All right, let's jump right into section one. IBM's $10 billion quantum roadmap, building Starling and Blue Jay. Let's start with the ultimate goals of this plan. The machines that are going to unlock algorithmic complexity that we previously thought was just impossible. Notice the shift in terminology here from physical to logical qubits. That is absolutely crucial. By 2029, the Starling system is slated to deliver 200 logical qubits capable of executing 100 million operations. A logical qubit is basically an error-corrected qubit that can actually sustain complex calculations without failing. So Starling is the foundation. It paves the way for Blue Jay in 2033, which scales everything up to a massive 2,000 logical qubits and 1 billion operations. To put that crazy number into perspective, just to classically represent the computational state of Starling, you would need the memory of over a quindexillion of today's most powerful supercomputers, which is, physically impossible. Moving on to section 2, cracking quantum error correction, the math behind the machines. Okay, so the primary bottleneck preventing these massive systems from working right now is quantum noise. To get those perfect logical qubits we just talked about, you have to group a whole bunch of physical qubits together so they can catch and correct each other's errors. IBM is doing this using a new family of math called QLDPC codes, specifically something called the Gross code. Instead of just arranging qubits on a flat, simple 2D grid, this code uses profound topological geometry. Think of it like tiling qubits onto a three-dimensional torus manifold. Basically, a hyperspace donut, where moving in any direction loops you right back around. The size and the number of the holes in these exotic geometric spaces actually dictate the power and the security of those logical qubits. And here is why this specific math matters so much. Historically, if you used traditional surface codes, you needed thousands of physical qubits just to string together one single logical qubit. The physical overhead was just an absolute nightmare. But compared to that, this brilliant Gross code cuts the physical qubit overhead by 90%. Under this new scheme, IBM can encode 12 logical qubits using only 144 data qubits and 144 check qubits. That's just 288 physical qubits in total. It gives you the exact same protection as the old surface codes, but requires 10 times less hardware. It's a total game changer. But having a great mathematical code is really only half the battle. You also have to identify and decode all these errors instantly, right before they ruin your calculation. The decoder has to process an absolute fire hose of error data in sub-microseconds. And that's exactly why IBM developed Relay BP. It's a lightning-fast classical algorithm that runs locally on compact, specialized chips to correct errors in real time. It achieves a 5 to 10 times speedup over previous decoders. This means you completely remove the need to hook up a massive, separate external supercomputer just to handle the error checking. Which brings us perfectly to section 3, the modular hardware revolution, scaling out, not just up. To actually physically build these hyperspace geometries, IBM had to fundamentally rethink their hardware architecture from the ground up.
Let's track how this builds year over year. Because the Gross code requires qubits to connect over long distances on a chip, not just to the guy right next to them, they have a very specific rollout. In 2025, the Loon processor tests those long-range connections. Then in 2026, Kookaburra becomes the first module to combine a logical processing unit directly with quantum memory. By 2027, Cockatoo uses microwave connections to physically entangle completely separate processor modules together. And all of this converges in 2029 with Starling, bringing these connected modules together to finally achieve large-scale fault tolerance.
When you look closely at how intricately wired this modular architecture is, you can really see the physical reality of this plan taking shape. The days of trying to build one giant monolithic quantum chip, those are ending. You just hit thermal and physical limits way too fast. So this modular strategy means they are scaling out. It's essentially a Lego-like approach, seamlessly snapping smaller, highly efficient processor chips together into one giant combined system. It is exactly how you bypass physical barriers and scale up to the tens of thousands of physical qubits we're going to need for the future.
Let's look at Section 4, Quantum-Centric Supercomputing, the Hybrid Compute Fabric. Okay, there is a massive misconception out there that quantum computers are just going to completely replace our classical computers. Not true at all. Instead, these modular quantum processors are designed to be tightly woven into classical supercomputers to act as accelerators. Think of it kind of like how we use GPUs for AI today, but on a whole other level. Here's how it works. First, IBM's Qiskit software stack takes a complex scientific problem and breaks it all down. Second, that workload is intelligently orchestrated. The standard, everyday math, that goes to classical CPUs and GPUs. And third, only the most intensely entangled, classically impossible parts of the problem are handed off to the quantum processing units, or QPUs. They all work perfectly together as one unified hybrid compute fabric.
And finally, Section 5, Real-World Scientific Breakthroughs, from Theory to Practice. Now, the absolute best part is that we don't even have to wait until 2029 to see this hybrid approach actually yield results. Scientists are using these exact hybrid systems right now to achieve things classical computers really struggle with. For example, IBM partnered up with the Cleveland Clinic and Riken to simulate a massive 12,635 atom protein. They're also working with Oak Ridge National Lab to model the exact atomic behavior of FLIB liquid salts, which, by the way, is highly critical for extracting tritium fuel in future nuclear fusion reactors. And, incredibly, they've even used quantum systems to help engineer an entirely new exotic molecule. The creation of this half-Mobius molecule is just, well, it's staggering. Working alongside universities across Europe, they built a molecule whose electrons actually travel in a corkscrew-like pattern. We're talking a 90-degree twist with every circuit, taking 4 full loops just to return to its starting phase. Trying to simulate that behavior would completely overwhelm a classical computer because the electrons are just so deeply entangled. But a quantum computer, it speaks the exact same quantum mechanical language as the molecule itself. This proves that with quantum systems, complex electronic topology can be deliberately engineered in a lab rather than just discovered by accident in nature. I think Jerry Chou, the CTO of quantum-centric supercomputing at IBM, really hit the nail on the head with this quote. He says, bringing quantum, AI, and classical computing together is essential to tackling our society's most fundamental scientific challenges. The crucial takeaway here is synergy. Uniting these computing paradigms, quantum, classical, and AI, unlocks answers to physical world problems in chemistry, in materials science, and in medicine that absolutely no single system could ever solve on its own. So what does this all mean for us? With a fully funded $10 billion blueprint charting a really precise step-by-step course through math, software, and hardware all the way to 2029, the era of quantum utility is officially upon us. It's no longer a question of if fault-tolerant quantum computing will change the world. The real question you have to ask yourself today is, whose world is it going to change first? And are you ready for it?